Hello, everyone, and welcome to another podcast. And today we have a psychologist with us who is going to share a lot of insights about what is going on inside here. Because once we understand how our brain works and how human behavior works, it's much easier to figure out social cues to become better at expressing yourself. So, Rahul, how about this? We can start with a quick introduction.
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. This is the first time I'm doing a podcast. So my name is Rahul. I'm a psychologist by education. I have an MSc in management psychology and a postgraduate diploma in rehabilitation psychology. I have worked in different sectors across, I think, about 14 years now, which include education, management, research, and here I am now. I'm a full-time and I'm a practicing psychologist. I basically like to help young people who are having adjustment difficulties with relation to stress, anxiety, and depression, very particularly around work and relationships. And my overall objective is to just help people lead a healthy and independent life, most importantly.
Fine, that is actually a wonderful introduction. What kind of got you into, say, studying the human mind and understanding psychology?
To be honest with you, I didn't know what to do. And I just, at one point of time, I had seen my mother growing up. I'd seen my mother, she's a pediatrician. So she would sit with these, big books and she would be reading them. And, she was a very dedicated doctor. There are lots of doctors who don't invest in continued learning. But my mother, she was always, if she was not seeing patients in the hospital or in the clinic, she was learning. So, I looked at it like that. So, I felt like this was a place where I could learn about myself. And I had a lot of questions about myself, a lot of, sort of a willingness to understand myself better, I guess you could call it, because I didn't know what I wanted out of life. So I felt this was a good way to go. And that's where I started. I actually started with a simple BA in psychology, sociology, and marketing. And then and that's where my interest in psychology kind of peaked. And then I went to the UK to do my master's.
Makes sense. And I want to ask you this. What is one thing you've learned about, say, human behavior that not many people are familiar with?
Well, I think that's an interesting question. I'll say it in one line. We are our worst enemies. We are our worst enemies. That is the one thing that I have seen time and time again. I've seen it with people who are addicts. I've seen it with people who are just stuck with certain automatic thoughts in their head and they aren't even aware that those thoughts are there, but those thoughts are running their life, because that's the internal dialogue that you have with yourself. A lot of the problems and the challenges that we face in life, I'm not trying to minimize the impact of trauma here. If somebody's had a traumatic experience in life, which a lot of people do, which is actually now research is beginning to realize that is the source of a lot of adjustment difficulties, so to speak, or even serious diagnosable mental health challenges that people face. A lot of the problems that people create for themselves and continue to create for themselves, the perpetuation of even those serious mental health conditions happens through essentially the concept of self-sabotage. Because when life presents you with a different set of circumstances, say, a person who's only seen failures in their life, right? A person who's always failed at relationships, a person who doesn't really love themselves. The moment they find themselves in a relationship that's good for them, they are the ones that will find a way to get themselves out of that relationship. Like maybe it's just not the right time, I am not placed well, this thing, or, you deserve someone better and, I'm not a good person. So, that's where all this dialogue starts. And so, and you can apply that in any aspect of your life, professional, personal, intrapersonal, your dialogue with yourself also. It just is the most important thing.
Okay. So when you say that we are our worst enemy, then a lot of these people who are, say, introverted, who face extreme social anxiety, and you kind of realize that they are self-sabotaging. But how do they go from making themselves the enemy to becoming their own friend?
It's a long process, It's a long process. It isn't an overnight process, right? The first step is to actually realize that you have a problem, right? Because I'll tell you what, with the advent of, when, like, I'm now 39, right? When I was growing up, we didn't have, like, I had that Nokia mobile phone, Nokia 1100. It was so heavy that if it hit somebody on the head, you'd give them a traumatic brain injury, So basically, that's the phone we had. The maximum that we had was that game, Snake, right? And our life was very different. My life, I can see it now, like, my life is very different. And I think it's true for a lot of other people in my generation as well. We actively sought opportunities to get out of the house. Like, there were years in my college where I would spend about half an hour at home every day. Like, khana khane ke liye ghar aana hai, and then otherwise I'm out from morning till evening. I'm not at home. But these days, when you become, so, if I felt going through a phase where, I didn't have friends around or this thing, or, my friends were traveling or I was alone, it really hit home with me, right? And it would bother me. And so, I would push myself to get into hobbies and this thing. But these days, it's very convenient to be sort of locked up in a room, because you have everything you need at the push of a button. You have food delivered to you. You have necessities taken care of. You can get your house cleaned and not even get out of your room. So the first thing is to realize the importance of social contact, which I think a lot of people have lost this thing. So, it becomes very convenient that, I'll just be by myself. Social contact is very important. It's very important for your continued development. It's very important to have interactions with other human beings if you want your brain to be active, basically. There are, sort of studies that document changes in the brain, physical changes that have mapped physical changes in the brain between people who, between people who had less social contact versus people who had, bigger circles of social contact. There are different life expectancy outcomes associated with them, different health and disease-related outcomes associated based on your contacts with people. So, the first step is realizing the importance of that it's very important to be out and about. Second step is acknowledging that you're an introvert. Because what happens when you acknowledge that, you immediately stop comparing yourself to your friend who's maybe not an introvert, who's really extroverted and, the life of the party and this thing. Because then you can be comfortable with the fact that, okay, that's them. I don't have to be like them. I don't have to be like this person. I don't have to have like 5,000 friends. I don't have to like 500 friends. And I can actually go out and have a conversation with the people that I feel comfortable with, right? Because in parties or in social occasions or, in social meetups, there are different types of people. You will find those people, but the first step is go out and talk to those people, Lastly, when it comes to the problem of social anxiety is, there are different ways of looking at it, right? So, and I'm not talking not purely as a psychologist, but, like even the other things that I said as a psychologist, I've shared those with other people. They are practical things, right? But even this is more practical, I feel, but I'll try and explain it in a simplistic way. Essentially, what happens is what we have discovered as time has gone by, what science has discovered as time has gone by. If you go through a certain event in your life that, say, triggers fear, right? Let's say the very fearful event in your life. Say you were going to do public speaking and for the first time in school, and your principal was in a bad mood, and you started speaking, and the principal started shouting, "I can't hear her, what is this? What is this? You haven't trained this girl properly." And as a child, that petrified you, right? And that created that negative association that when I speak up, something bad happens. And it scares you. Those kind of things can scare people. So what happens is, in the brain, if you want to look at it like a mind map, consider that event as a node, right? Now that node can trigger off, say, the neural network in your brain or neural pathways in the brain that are associated with anxiety, right? It can make them overactive. So when you're going on stage, those neural networks are activated. Maybe because those neural networks get activated, those pathways get activated, the anxiety pathways, if they stay activated long enough in your life, then maybe they further activate they further activate a neural pathway or the regions of the brain that are associated with depression, right? So that's just very simply put, how one event can trigger anxiety, and then perhaps because of the isolation that anxiety brings for that person, right? That person is anxious not to be able to speak to other people, and this thing, they get isolated. There's social isolation, and eventually they start feeling depressed, right? So once they're going through depression, there can be other mental health concerns that can come into the picture depending upon various factors. So it's very important to be able to identify what was the jumping off point. Yeah, the trigger point, right? If you can identify the trigger point within yourselves, and this takes a lot of work, right? It takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of honest work with yourself. If you can be honest with yourself and say, okay, this was the point. Because usually these events are so embarrassing that, people don't want to face them, or they're so or they're so full of, they bring up so much fear or so much overwhelming emotions, because there's so many emotions going on at the same time. It's hard to even go back to that place. So people don't want to even sort of, go back into that memory. And it's not happening now. Basically, your brain makes you believe it's still happening. It's still happening. It's sort of like something that's come unstuck. But if you can understand that, then your social anxiety can begin to change, because then you can change your associations with the events that are happening right now. Then you have the power to change your responses to a situation. Then you don't start, because then you're not reacting anymore, right? Then you're acting, and that makes a difference.
So essentially, first of all, you have a traumatic life experience. You then have a core belief that is formed that kind of becomes unshakable, and that sort of results in other trigger points. And you carry that anxiety, you carry that depression forward in your life. Okay.
You have to see, I think that's the biggest problem that happens, right? So people get stuck in a loop, right? So what happens is, along with that event, let's consider the same event that we talked about here, this boy or girl or child standing in front. So maybe let's assume that the automatic dialogue in their head as a result of that is, oh my God, or you can't even speak, or you can't speak. Maybe earlier the dialogue was, I'm so scared, and I'm so scared to speak up. I'm so scared to speak up. Eventually, over multiple events where they are unable to speak, somebody comes and tells them, hey, why aren't you have to be able to speak? Come on now. All right, that was so long ago. So then the internal dialogue changes, and it becomes, I can't speak. I just can't speak publicly. I can't speak publicly. So that internal dialogue also evolves, right, over time. So if you can understand what that internal dialogue is, you can begin to change it. And the problem is that over years and years, that internal dialogue becomes so entrenched that it begins to impact other parts of your life, right? Begins to impact, so that, I can't even speak up for myself can become, I'm worthless. I'm absolutely worthless. I'm just worthless. I can't do anything. I can't stand up for myself. In another situation, maybe what happens is, let's say the same person is put on a table and told that, this relative has died, and this relative has left 80% of their wealth to your brother and 20% of their wealth to you, right? Now this person with such low self-esteem will know in their head that, hey, that sounds unfair. This should be 50-50 at the very least, or no, I did so much more for this deceased relative, I should deserve more. But they won't be able to stand up for themselves. So then that internal dialogue goes from, you're worth only this much. So suddenly a dialogue of fear has turned into a internal dialogue of, this is my financial worth. This is what I'm financially worthy of doing. Or I can't handle money. I can't handle this thing. So what happens is, in reality, and this is very true, I think this is the best way that I can put the psychological wisdom that I have accumulated over the years, but there are lots of voices that are living in your head, right? And they are not yours. So what happens is, people like to, everybody likes to fantasize, right? They go like, oh, I wish I'd said this and this thing, and they're having these really thoughts in their, and they're replaying that thought, they're replaying that event. Oh, I should have told this to my boss, or, you bloody idiot, and this thing, or, I wish I could just see him again, or I wish I could see her again, I would tell her, oh, that was very wrong. Oh, I wish I could tell her I love her, or wish I could tell him I love her. All of those things, you're reliving those dialogues in your head. But those people aren't, but those things, they're there in your head, right? So you have to, in the best way that you have to speak them out. You have to speak them out. You have to live them out for you to be able to see them. There's many ways to do it, one of the best ways to do it, you go to therapist. I mean, that's what a lot of therapists end up doing, right? Eventually. See, because it's all well and good for me to say that I am trained in cognitive behavior therapy. What I essentially do is I help people realize that, hey, this is your underlying belief and this is how that belief is operating in your life. That's in a very simple manner, making people aware of their cognitions, of their beliefs, and the underlying ways in which how they are attaching a number of cognitions to come to that belief, right? That's essentially what cognitive behavior therapy does. To have a really, really cathartic effect, you have to be able to tell them, where did this belief come from? How did this belief come from? What happened here? What is this thing? And to help them live that out, right? So one of the other things that I do is I do a lot of theater. I've been doing theater for almost 17 years. So one of the practices that we have in theater is called gibberish. And this is something that you do in a lot of people do in theater workshops, is that they'll put two people on stage, or even actors can do this. They do this because it's a really good exercise in understanding intention, right? So they're told that you can't use words. Sorry, the actors are essentially told that you can't use words, all right? But this is the situation, and now without using words, real words, you have to convey your intentions. Let's say it's a situation where somebody stepped on your foot on the bus stop, at a bus stop, or you're having an argument at a bus stop. You can't use words, but you can go, this thing. What that does is, then you are only aware of the intention that's going on inside. What is my intention? You can tell them you're supposed to scold him, right? Sometimes people can't find the words to scold someone, but they have the emotion, right? And if the words aren't there, then the language isn't there. And that's what keeps people from sometimes saying what's on their mind. That's why they say, I wish I could show you how I feel. I wish I could tell you how I feel. All right. Show me how you feel. And you can try and do this in front of a mirror at home. You can try and do this in front of a mirror at home. I'd strongly advise you to close your door. And, because I'll tell you what happens in that exercise. Your body will feel, if you're doing it right, you will feel physically involved. Don't half-ass it. Go for it. Because see, in theater, what they teach you is that intention is something very pointed. Like in theater, everything has to be exaggerated. Theater acting is very different from film acting, right? Film acting, where there's a camera like this, right next to your face. So even the smallest changes in expression, and there's a mic and this thing. So even smallest, slight changes in voice, intonation, and everything are caught. But in theater, you have to connect with the person sitting in the last row, and it's a very immediate impact, right? So you have to be very pointed. So if I'm talking to you, I might say, hey, you do this thing, but my finger is really tight, there's energy in it. It can't be like, hey, you. There's a different way. This is a different body language, right? So and that's the same thing that comes with gibberish as well. So if you're feeling angry, and there's no word to it, just express it with your body. Get angry in this thing and let go. Let go for, if you can, for 5 or 10 minutes. Let go. And you'll feel it in your body. You'll feel tired after that.
No, I was saying that a lot of people don't process their emotions a lot. Like, if you're feeling sad, then people just say, watch a movie, get some ice cream. But I think this gibberish method is an interesting way to sort of process your emotion.
Yeah, see, that's the worst thing to do. That's what our culture has trained into us, essentially. Right, these words are not mine, what I'm saying right now. I've learned them from somebody, but I'll still say them because I believe that they're very powerful words. Essentially, that's what our culture has done to us. It has trained these things into us, that whenever you feel these strong emotions, you should just ignore them, right? You should try and, it's okay, we'll just, think about something else. This is useless. These emotions are, if you want I mean, essentially what we do, what a psychologist does is when I sit you across the table from me, I make you doubt your unhappiness. If you're telling me that oh my God, I'm so ugly, right, this thing, right? Or, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. And I can see that, and I can see your academic record in front of me, or I have asked you your academic record, I can tell you that perhaps, maybe there's some room for doubt here. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm making you doubt your unhappiness. And the doubting of that unhappiness, it reveals the truth, right? So that's the power of doubt. But if you're ready to doubt your unhappiness, you should be ready to doubt your happiness as well. Because nothing stays, right? Your happiness doesn't stay. Everybody goes through that continuous flow in life. They have good days, they have bad days, right? So people just want good things out of life constantly, right? That's the culture that that's the culture kids are growing up in. Instant gratification. Swiggy, Instamart, Amazon, Prime on Demand, Netflix. Yeah, that's the culture we're this thing in, right? So, and that's bad, right? Because what that's teaching kids is, or what that is essentially not just kids, it's teaching everybody that, life is only meant to be good, or life is worth it only when it's good. But I mean, that's not true, right? Right? You can't just deny the bad days. You have to live the bad days as well. And so if you're having a bad emotion, that bad emotion is also worth paying attention to. And because it's a natural part of life. And I'm not now, and again, I want to be very clear, I'm not trying to say that, if you're depressed and you've been depressed for years, that, you're not listening, or you're not, I'm not talking about somebody who's having a serious mental health issue right now. I'm talking about a lot of young professionals in this thing who are having serious adjustment difficulties, who aren't essentially in touch with themselves, right? And what that does is it creates a split inside of you. Yeah. Go on.
Glad that you talked about the whole cultural thing, because when you said that, it reminded me of this movie by Amitabh Bachchan called Goodbye. And essentially, it shows the whole journey of an Indian funeral, where one after the other, there are so many processes, and you get so busy that you don't actually get to process your emotions. Whereas if you see a Christian funeral, you would see that you get eulogies, you get to express yourself. So there's a big contrast and big difference in terms of the Western culture, say, trying to process the emotions, where they are more pro-therapy. Whereas if you ask an Indian to go to therapy, they would probably be like, why can't I just talk to my friend?
Yeah, so, I think that's their world over, Nobody likes to admit that I need help. Nobody wants to admit that I need help. It's the reason why alcoholics stay alcoholics. It's the reason why addicts stay addicts. Oh, it's fine. It's just one drink, or just, one hit of this thing. Or, I won't do after this. Or, no, I'm fine, I mean, like, I'll take care of my health. Don't worry. Or, I'll get that done. Nobody likes to admit that they need help. And, well, because essentially that would mean accepting your frailties or accepting your flaws. But the thing that we have learned, the thing that all of us have learned growing up, is that we learn to judge ourselves very well. We learn to completely judge ourselves, and we judge ourselves time and time again, saying that, you're such an idiot. You're not able to do this. You're not able to do that. I'm not able to do that either. And even your emotions, you judge your emotions. Like, you feel sad. Oh, that's not good. Even when, like, you're talking about a funeral, I know people who say, like, I can't cry, because if I cry, or, I'm sad, other people will cry. People are looking to me to be a paragon of strength. Why can't you imagine that, other people are also looking at you for permission to express their emotion? Maybe if you look at your own emotions, if you see your emotions as so powerful, okay, that's good. That's great. Your emotions are powerful. But if you see that power, what are you doing? The first thing that you're doing is you're denying that power. I'm not going to express it. And that's what a lot of people do with their emotions, right? I am so angry. I'm so angry. Anger is such a powerful emotion. What are you going to do? You're going to deny it. You tell an angry person, hey, why don't you learn martial arts? Hey, why don't you go play some sports and this thing? Why don't you, play some contact sport or this thing? No. Until they do it, that's when they realize the power. Because suddenly what they do is they start channeling their emotions. They start focusing. They start creating that focus in it. because all these activities, they bring focus. Even to be able to cry on stage, right? To cry on stage, like the technique that they teach you, that if you can't really cry, you amp up the emotion and you stop blinking your eye. If you stop blinking your eyes, you'll feel that burn in your eyes. But that's just that energy getting really, really focused and really, really sharp, really, the air hitting your eyes, and eventually those tears come, right? So people don't like that focus. So what they do is, like you said earlier, it's so easy to just, I'm feeling this feeling, I'm just going to watch some Netflix.
When you talked about giving yourself permission and giving yourself also the excuse saying that I need to be the strength of this family, like I kind of related to that a lot, because 3 months ago, my mom had a brain stroke and she was paralyzed from the left side. Right now she's recovered. Hand still has to recover. But while me, my younger brother, my father, my grandma, my uncle, all of us were there in that, say, hospital room, none of us had the strength to express ourselves or cry or feel anything. We were just running around, and we thought that if we start crying, maybe our mother will feel bad. And that is why we didn't even have the strength to do that. And now that I look back at it, if I would have cried or if I would have expressed myself a bit, the amount of stress and the amount of sleepless nights I had just staying up and thinking about it constantly would have possibly gone down.
Here, I'd like to say one more thing here. It's very important to understand the sanctity of your emotions, right? What happens is, these days, everybody feels an emotion. They're very keen to get on the internet and post it. They're very keen to get on Instagram and talk about it, right? Very keen. The moment you do it, you lose it. The moment you express that emotion outside, especially on a public forum like that, you lose it. It's good to do it. It's good to acknowledge it within yourself. Good. Because then you're holding it within you. You're with it. You're with it. You know the sanctity of it. But the moment you share it, you not only invite your own judgment, you invite other people's judgment. Because say you put it out there, or maybe 5 people write something really nice about it, or the 6th person says something really critical, and then your mind is such a thing, it won't care about those 5 nice things that are written there. It'll care only about that 6th thing. And then suddenly what that does is that invites your own judgments to come back in. And you have to sort of, people don't acknowledge the power of their own judgments in sort of hurting themselves, in sort of damaging themselves. And that's like, because of what I said earlier, like, we have so many of these voices, so to speak, in our head, that you have to be able to, sort of take care of.
Okay. So what was one belief that you had earlier that you felt very strongly about that you had to change in your own life?
I quit smoking 3.5 years ago. So essentially, I had started smoking in, I think, I was 21, 22 at the time. I was stressed and I was this thing. And I believe that cigarettes help relieve stress, right? And eventually, like for every smoker, what it had become is that, it's just an activity that relaxes me and this thing. But in reality, I had reached a point where I had started to feel like when I smoke, I get even more agitated, I get even more upset and this thing. And this is not working for me. And of course, the fact that I know my grandfather, when he passed of lung cancer. He was a smoker too. So, obviously I know the dangers of smoking, the health dangers. But, that's what a belief does. It tells you, it's fine, because the mind looks for short-term benefits rather than long-term gains, right? Everybody's looking for that short-term benefit and this thing. So I had to convince myself that I had to let go of the belief, essentially, that this was actually calming me down or de-stressing me, because there's enough medical evidence out there that tells you to the contrary. And once I was able to do that, that's the point. Once I was able to understand, let go of those false beliefs, quitting smoking was easy. I tell you. And I had a whole pack, and I'll tell you how I did it. By the way, it's really, really simple. I don't deserve any credit for it. The entire credit goes to this book called Easy Way to Quit Smoking. All right. It's by this guy called Carr. All right. Alan Carr. Now, to give you certain statistics, like when people try the willpower method, the success rate, I believe, is supposed to be 5 to 7% at the end of a year. Like 5 to 7% of the people who end up using the willpower method actually stay off of it. Nicotine comes and everything. Success rate is maybe about 2 to 3% at the end of a year. Like at the end of the year, they won't be smoking. With this book, your success rate, the document, and I don't know because they haven't released their research, I believe, or independently, but I think a lot of people have done research. The success rate is close to 50% at the end of the year, right? But that's the amazing thing, right? I mean, if there's such a powerful tool, more people ought to know about it, right? For people don't. You can go on Amazon, you can buy the book right now, and you'll see how much people value it, because that book is not going to be more than $200, right? It's going to be less than less than what you would spend on a pack of cigarettes. But once I did, what the amazing thing about the book is that what it does is it tells you, it's very intelligently written, right? At the beginning of the book, it tells you, please smoke as much as you want. I'm not going to ask you to stop smoking. You don't need to do that, right? And, smoke through the entirety of the book. But it tells you, I'm going to bring you to a point where we're going to do something, right? And I'm not going to say that, but because I guess it takes away from the power of that book. And that's what happened, I smoked my last cigarette. I was buying my cigarette packs as usual. I had 16 cigarettes left in that pack. I just tossed it to my wife. I said, I'm done. And my wife knows that I had tried to quit so many times before that. And she was like, yeah, sure. I know you're done. Right. But then that was it. It was done. I never went back to it. After that.
So this essentially, when you talk about this method for smoking and how you got rid of it, is it something that you can use with other things also, like other addictions?
There's different versions of this book. There's books for people who are struggling with obesity. There's books for people who are struggling with different aspects. The author's name is Alan Carr. Yeah. So people usually get the spelling wrong. Alan is Alan, but Carr is Carr. I'm pretty sure. So might be useful for people. But even now, I've recommended the book to a lot of people, and what I've seen is that a cynic is a cynic. Right, and that's where the thing comes. Your own beliefs come into play, or what you believe about yourself comes into play, right? Like I was watching this ad on Instagram. I'm not going to name the person because then be like this thing. I was watching this ad on Instagram. This ad was getting pushed to me, where this person is talking about they run an organization which helps managers and senior managers sort of who are struggling to speak up for themselves, or struggling with things like quote unquote communicating in an office and this thing. Those are real skills. Absolutely. The skills that this institution is offering are 100% valid, right? But I bet you there's 500 other programs within that person that's preventing them from already doing it for themselves. Until you address those programs within that person, those skills aren't going to make a difference. Which is why, which comes to the other side that you said about the stigma about coaching. The other stigma around coaching is there are lots of people that are selling lots of things, lots of good things, that may on the surface look like really good things, but in reality, they aren't doing anything for the person inside. So till you aren't really sort of, doing anything for the person inside, you aren't going to make a difference. It's very easy to sell a product these days. You can tell people, this is the end benefits and this thing and everything. And, people want to buy it, man. But at the end of the day, why don't you try and sell something that actually impacts people? And that's hard to do. I'm not saying I'm doing that. I'm not saying anybody or that person is not doing that. Maybe they are, right? But there are too many products like that.
How does someone sustain, say, long-term change? Because I have seen with a lot of people facing social anxiety. I mean, as you said last time, that human behavior is sort of in a mold all the time. So when someone faces social anxiety, they try to get out of their comfort zone. They do that for a couple of months, then it's back to square one. So what creates long-term change?
Long-term change requires discipline and commitment, right? And this is the part where, this is also the point in therapy where where a client has been coming to you for 3 or 4 months and this thing, and then they just sort of suddenly they're gone, or they say, nah, I don't need these things. And then eventually they'll come back to you 6-7 months later, this thing, something similar has happened. And, They come to you because that's how people treat therapy these days. People treat psychology these days. It's like a tune-up. How people go for these yoga retreats. These I just want to feel a little better. And this thing. Okay, I'm feeling good, well within myself now. Let's get back to things, right? But in reality, I'll give you my example. My wife fell very ill a few years ago, right? I realized that, and I was running a business at the time, and I had, my wife was not in good shape at that point of time. So I was very, very clear about one thing, and this is the time where I also quit my cigarettes. The quitting of the cigarettes came afterwards, but I told myself that I have to, and this was about 5 years ago now, 5-6 years ago, I said I have to run my life with a lot of discipline. So I get up at 5:30 or 6 every morning without fail, no matter what has happened, right? I allow myself room to relax and this thing. But it's now come down to the point where I know that if certain things don't happen for a few days, that I'm not feeling good, right? Basically, the point is that if you create that kind of organization in your life, basically it starts to support you. That's what people don't realize. It doesn't limit you. It is the only way. You have to first understand what your limits are as a person if you want to go beyond them, right? But what people do is people just like to wallow within those limits. They treat it like a swimming pool that they can just sort of wallow in. Exactly, right? So, and you can put anything in there, pity, this thing, or your feelings of sadness, inadequacy, and everything. You have to understand, okay, I feel this way. That's great. If you can define it for yourself, that's great. Then you start to build something around it, like a routine that that require the things that you need to do, that you want to sustain your change. And one of the things that always works, time and time again, is a routine. A routine always works. It's why what happens is when you put a drug abusers in a program in an institution, like in India, it's a very different thing, but like there are some good places now here in India too, lots of good places. But if you in there, they tell you you're going to run your life like a routine. You're going to wake up at the same time. You're going to make your bed. You're going to eat food at this time. You're going to this thing and everything. What they do is they remove unpredictability from your day. And what that does is suddenly it allows you to see, oh, okay, whenever there's a stressful circumstance coming in, let's say, for an alcoholic, it's always like, maybe it's a friend with whom, that you always go out to drink and this thing. So suddenly when you're back to normal life and you're living your life with that routine and that friend comes in, you're suddenly like asking yourself, oh, okay, I won't be able to eat my 9 o'clock meal. I won't sleep on time, this thing. So then there's a choice to make. Then you're breaking certain rules. And then what happens is, even if you go out, say with your friend, and you don't drink, but then you're able to see, oh my God, this is what disrupts my life, right? Because if I have a drink now, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and I'm going to be groggy and tired and this thing, I'm going to be bitter, I'm going to be angry. Suddenly you start feeling everything, right? So if you create those things in your life for yourself, it makes a huge difference. So for a person who's going through social anxiety, one of the best things that you can do is start to exercise. Start to exercise in the morning. And the second thing that you do is you start writing. And this is something we talked about the last time as well. Basically, attended a writer's workshop also once, a writer's workshop, and another workshop very recently where basically they discuss the power of this. It's very simple. You just take a pen, put it to paper, and you start writing. And you set a timer for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Till the timer goes off, you don't stop. You write. Keep writing. Write whatever comes out of you. And this is not like garden variety stuff that you're writing, right? So those voices in your head, that angry conversation that you had with your boss, the things that you want to do to your boss, no matter how unspeakable they are, you write them. And then you do it in a diary, right? Do it in a new diary and treat this diary and the point is that you should keep this diary hidden, right? You should keep this diary hidden. Keep this diary hidden because if your girlfriend finds this, if your boyfriend finds this, if your partner finds this, if your wife finds this, if your husband finds this, if your parents find this, if your friends find this, You're writing stuff in here that will destroy relationships, right? That, think of it like that, to put it in perspective. Or, this is really, but what it does is it shows you a side to yourself that you judge. And what it does is it creates an acceptance for that side, right? It creates an acceptance for that side. So, if you write something really dark about manipulating someone in there, how else do people play poker? It's not essentially manipulation, but you're not just playing the probabilities that are happening. Some people say, oh, it's just mathematical probabilities. Great. Fantastic. It's mathematical probabilities, yes. But you're also reading the room, right? You're also reading people. You'll also be like, okay, last time when these probabilities were there, this is how this guy played, right? He was aggressive and he's going to go all in. And then you take a calculated chance yourself, right? But to understand that, and to be able to do that, you have to first understand and accept that part of yourself. If you can't accept that part of yourself, you're just going to be like, it's not for me, right? Or for that matter, if somebody's being manipulative with you, a lot of times people just cower down under that and this thing. But if you understand it, then and only then can you do something about it. And to understand it, you have to first understand even you do it, right? Like, this is like something so interesting. It's so weird. Like, think about relationships, right? Think about relationships where, people are so scared of, well, not scared of, infidelity is very painful, right? When it happens, right? So, but then you have insecure boyfriends, insecure partners, and this thing, you were talking to him, or you were talking to her, you were talking to that person, feeling this thing and everything. So you're basically asking this, the first level of attraction is always going to be physical, right? I don't care whether you're in a relationship or you're not in a relationship. You see a beautiful person, or you see a beautiful dancer doing a dance. I don't care, man. That's the beauty of art. Right? You see a beautiful dancer. You see even a couple. If you see a couple doing tango, if you see a couple doing salsa, you look at them. You're looking at them, right? You're looking at them. You're looking at their energy. You're looking at the chemistry they share. It's magnetic, right? It pulls you in. It pulls you in as a viewer, right? It pulls you in, and you're watching, and you feel like moving like them, and you feel like moving like that with their partner. And that's the hypocrisy in it, right? If you are looking at and looking at that dance and feeling that way, don't you think your partner feels the same way? If you look at a person and feel like, person so hot, person so sexy, person so attractive, whatever, right? Be honest with yourself, right? Your partner feels the same way. Your partner is a human being too. They feel the same way. But what you do is, first you deny yourself, then you deny your partner, and it's just weird. It's not about you're denying you're repressing. You are repressing the other person. Actually, you are repressing. It's not about that, this person is controlling, but what they're doing is that they're repressing something real that the other person feels, that they themselves feel hypocritically. So if you are able to recognize that within yourself and realize that, oh my God, I'm judging something so natural. And that's what I mean by people judge themselves so harshly. It's not bad to feel attracted to someone. Even if you're in a relationship, you can look at them and feel attracted. And I'm not talking about, I want to be very clear, because people immediately then jump to the other end of the spectrum. Oh, so this guy's talking about open relationships and this thing and everything. For those who it works for, great for you. It doesn't work for me. All right. But I am clear within myself that, my wife is going to find somebody hot someday. I'm going to find somebody hot. I've been working in theater for so long, right? I've had to learn how to do fake kisses. Yeah, so basically what you do is you put your thumb, and I was so anxious to do it, so nervous about doing it the first time. The first time I did it, I was single, right? I was not seeing anybody. And this girl who was doing it with me, she was married at the time, right? So the person who should be, quote unquote having the problem is her, but she was like, no, this is not how you do it. The first person who actually did it, showed me how to do it, was my director, who is male. And he just walked over to me, and I'm like, and he just puts his thumb on my lips, and he just kisses me. And he's like, it's done. Your lips don't touch. But what I'm saying is, there's still that level of intimacy, right? You're so close to the other person. You can feel their body, you can holding them and this thing. So it's a natural feeling. It's a natural thing. You have to be, and those are the things that when you write them out, you see them that that they are also a part of you? And can you be honest with yourself and accept that they are also a part of me, that my hypocrisy is also a part of me? You find that other person hypocritical because you are a hypocrite yourself. What about the times where you've been a hypocrite? You know you've been a hypocrite. You know you have betrayed people. You know that there are times that you have let other people down, which is why you feel so upset on other people letting me down. And so when you start to do that and write that out and start accepting yourself, it creates a healthy acceptance of things that are happening around you. It doesn't mean that you become like okay with everything is going on. No. What it does is makes you very aware. And that makes it easy to say, no, you're not going to do this to me. It makes it easy to say no because you know exactly what is happening. People don't know what is happening. People realize that they've been betrayed and shit canned afterwards.
Yeah. I actually relate to this because my parents are divorced and my dad did cheat on my mom and gave my dad like a couple of chances, but each time he disappointed. So I think when you kind of write things down and you understand your own thoughts properly, then you don't allow the other person to even take that chance with you. Or what are your thoughts on that? Like, if someone disrespects your boundary, do you even give them another chance to say disappoint you again?
See, in reality, let's be honest, all of us do that. We do that with our friends and this thing. See, the point is not that, you shut these or you throw these people out of your life. The point is not that. This is going to happen to you on a day-to-day basis. Your boss is going to do that to you. Your friends are going to do that to you. See, what happens is, think about it like this. One thing that is the weirdest thing about Indian families. Is, and it's in so many Indian families, not just Indian families, I've seen it I believe it happens the world over. When their child starts doing better than them, some parents feel insecure. That's the relationship that you share with a parent who traumatizes you. You become their victim. Right? Because they are always, and how do they pull you down? They don't pull you down through overt acts. They pull you down by saying, like, mothers who will say, "Arey, tu to mera khayal hi nahi rakhta. Ab to tu office jata. Ab to tu humko dekhega." What they don't realize what they're doing right then, right? They are actually draining them of their quote-unquote emotional capital. It's so draining to be at the receiving end of that conversation. And what you do is, through years and years, you make those people feel tired. You make those people feel really small and petty about themselves. You make them feel like, but in reality, what you ought to be able to do in that situation is tell them, listen, I know you're my parent, okay? I respect you and this thing, enough for that, right? But this is bullshit. That is how you draw a boundary. Boundaries exist in all relationships. It's not just boundaries aren't walls, that's the new concept. Boundary is just like, you stay in your limit, stay over there, please. This is my limit, this is this thing, right? So then that allows you, creates a phenomena or a situation where the other person actually seeks your permission.
Okay.
Not verbally, but their behavior changes. Then they're like more aware, more attuned to you, because then you're showing them all your aspects. So the aspects that you write down, the aspects that you were in rejection of, your anger, your frustration. Hey, this is really tiring me out. You think that is some good emotion? No, that's not. That's a powerful emotion. That's anger. And it's not just anger. It's not like a blunt knife, but it's a scalpel. You're making a small cut, a small incision exactly where you need to, and you're telling them this. That's it. Enough. Stop.
So like establishing boundaries, say, early on, and then just observing the other person. Are they adhering to you? Are they respecting you? Or are they constantly disrespecting? And if they do, then you sort of recognize those patterns and now you know what your next move is. Correct?
Yeah, exactly. You know what your next move is. People know what they need to do. A lot of people, they know what they need to do. They just feel helpless under the burdens of trauma. They're either, trapped by certain social situations. But mostly, it's very important to make them realize that there are certain elements where only they and they themselves are trapping themselves. only they are trapping themselves. And if you are able to give them a little bit of agency, right? And it doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen all the time. As a therapist, doesn't happen all the time. And that's okay, right? Even if 30-40% go away feeling this or taking this message, then that is good, right? But I think one of the reasons that people don't get it is because my profession is to blame. My profession has become great at providing summaries to people, right? This is your problem in detail. I'm feeling this, I'm feeling social anxiety. Oh, so there is this node, there is that node, this is getting activated, that is getting activated. You can get this test done. And this is your, personality, this thing, this is interplaying with that and everything and all of that. Okay, what do I do? It's going to take time. That's the narrative that's become, right? So, but these are the things that I'm telling you, like, the writing, standing in front of the mirror and going, this thing, for just this thing. Just try and experience it for yourself. Right? Or, just take a pillow and shout into it. Yeah, do that, But the thing is that's not expression. You don't know. That is just like a dam breaking. That is just like a dam breaking. What I'm asking you to do is, when you write, I'm asking you to create a waterfall. A waterfall is beautiful. So then you can appreciate what's coming out of it, right? You can love what's coming out of it, no matter what's coming out of it. And that's how you create healthy self-love. That's how you create a healthy appreciation for yourself. These people who are really, really good at it, like unfailingly good at it, are psychopaths. They're really good at it. They don't care about anybody else but themselves. I am number one in my life. But there are lessons worth learning from them as well. I told you last time, so that book I highly recommend it to a lot of people, because that a lot of people have a fascination with this macabre aspect, right? Like, serial killers, crime and this thing. It's not about, but they're even more fascinated with the people who did it, right? And over time, I've come to understand people are fascinated by them because these people have not all of them, all of these, a lot of these criminals accept what they did. They're like, yeah, I did it. And that's like something people envy. People envy that. People envy that because, that complete absence of guilt, right? Because people feel guilty to stand up for themselves. Like, if I say this, I know because in their head, they know what they associate standing up with is hurting somebody else. No, okay, maybe the other person feels a little this thing, but aren't your feelings worth this thing for? Maybe you don't have to, sort of reply to the other person in similar abusive and harsh language. Say what you have to say.
Yes, that does make sense. And my final question for you, Rahul, is that what is the darkest truth in your own life that you had to accept?
Wow. The darkest truth that I had to accept in my own life is that I am my only savior. I am the only person who can do anything about it. I actually, be honest with you, I have dealt with very low self-esteem myself, right? And it's a very tricky thing to manage, self-esteem. That's why I try to be sort of, that's something that's very important for me to help. That's why it's very important for me to help other people address that about themselves, right? Because it changes everything. So I'll give you an example of how little sometimes I think of myself and I don't even realize it, and maybe other people will understand that. It was my birthday on 7th of August, right? So what my wife did is she reached out to all my friends. She reached out to my cousins from my childhood, people who I didn't even think would this thing. And she asked them to record a video for me. Like a small, 15, whatever, 1 minute and some short video, this thing, right? She showed me the videos. People said such things about me. Like, I was like, I was amazed that people love me so much, right? It was an experience of that. Like, people, if people look at this and say, oh my God, this guy is full of himself, let them, but I actually felt like in that moment that people love me so much and I do not love myself the same way. I just do not, and so that has been a repeated reminder that has come to me in my life. I am my best advocate. I am my harshest critic. And I am the only person who can save me. There's nobody else who is going to come and save me. That's the truth. And that's, I think, the truth. It's not about feeling helpless, but that's what turns you towards that direction of okay, I have to accept myself. Well, what people do? What people do is, people get into their life and they start fighting with it. They start fighting with it. I want that job. I'm going to work harder than this guy. Or leave alone a job. I want that IIT. I want that IIM. 7th class se bacche lage hue hain. They're like, I used to see my sister, man. She actually got into the IITs, to be fair to her, and she's very smart at this thing. My cousin sister. But she was at it from the time that she was in 7th. And there were other kids along with her who didn't make it, right? Who went to lesser engineering colleges and this thing. But everybody's in that this thinking, you have that life is a battle, life is a fight. And eventually that's the relationship you've created with yourself. You're not allowed to feel tired right now. Get up. Oh, you get up. Oh, get up. You set unrealistic standards for yourself. And then a day comes where you're like, I can't keep up with this. I can't keep up with this. And that is the day where you start rejecting yourself, where you start judging yourself. Those things are not तू अपनी औकात में रहे, वो उसके लेवल की बात है. That is the dialogue that people have. That is the program essentially that people have running within themselves, that you can change, that you can have a healthy acceptance for yourself. That makes a big difference. That puts you in that direction of when you come to therapy, you bring that same attitude. Then you're bringing that same approach to therapy as well. How is it going to work? It's not going to work. It's not going to work. You bring that same approach to yourself, it's not going to work. Some people turn to spirituality, but they go to spirituality with that same thing that, I'm going to attain nirvana and this thing, I'm going to be blessed by the 7 heavens and this thing. They go with the same approach. So you have to understand that the biggest, that the U-turn that you have to take in your life is towards yourself. The biggest U-turn that you have to take in your life is towards yourself. That's where it all begins.
Got it. So you can't really go to a self-reflection journey with a goal-oriented approach, essentially. You have to go with the approach of, I'll try this, let's see what happens, without any expectations whatsoever.
Process, essentially. Like, I'll speak it in a language that a lot of at least the people that I want to be able to help will probably understand. And, I'm guessing a lot of people that you also want to help will be able to process. It's about process, right? You divorce yourself from the outcome, which is very hard to do, right? But the moment you divorce yourself from the outcome, it becomes something interesting. It's like creating a painting. Is there a right or wrong in painting? Unfortunately, in our schools, it is. In schools, like I grew up, I remember I considered myself to be horrible at drawing. I probably still am. I don't know. But that's again, something. But then I realized there's nothing stopping me from picking up colors and just putting them on a canvas and this thing, if there is somebody in the world who believes that they can paste a banana on a canvas and sell it for $2 million, I can do something for my personal pleasure and this thing on a canvas and this thing, right? So, you got to sort of, then when you remove the outcome from it, you know where to go. But then if you start looking at the process, then makes the journey fun. Then you start having fun. Yeah.
Focusing on the journey rather than the result. Of course it's hard, but I love the way you put it as divorcing yourself from the outcome and just being present. That makes sense. And Rahul, definitely this has been a wonderful conversation.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I've also had a really nice time. You asked, I think, great questions that brought out this stuff. Like, I always believe that stuff doesn't come out in a vacuum, right? Somebody, somebody has to provoke that stuff out of you. And you did that beautifully. Thank you so much.
Makes sense. And thank you guys for watching this. And hopefully you also learned a lot. And I'll link the books in the description. And I'll link Rahul's Instagram as well. So you can check him out. And thank you for listening.